I zoom in, but it's hard to tell in the camera. That's like asphalt. Really hard. You can see it on the jump face. There's some trucks here too. Trucks and buggies. Well, hello. This is the old man again, carrying on about all his toys he's got. I finally got my collection. No red. Hope that don't make anybody mad, but actually the green one's my wife's, so that'll just probably be the pretty one. But two of these I got used. This was red. This had it had all that. I didn't want red, so black. But what I did with this, the same thing I tell everybody to do, is make sure things are turning. I didn't. The rear shock is stock, and I had to fiddle with the front a little to get this to. But I ended up taking the caliper apart because that was locking up really bad. The second time I tried it with the knob that it had on it, and I mean it was undrivable. I couldn't get a lap in, so I quickly switched and put the whole shot on it here. I don't even count that as a run actually, because the bike needed some changes on it, and I would say mainly the rear spring. Because it has the hard spring on it, it's all stock. So I changed that to 30 weight. Took it out with a whole shot. I still could not get a lap in. It was a struggle. Really, really hard to run. And I know the consistency should be there because I've run 4 of these now with the Pro 5, the DX5 Pro radio. And the settings are all consistent. I got that all ironed out, so it's just exactly the way I want it. Trimming on the fly, I had to do that several times, so that's nice having that right there where your thumb can touch it. And that's really important. Jeff and I were talking, there was only 2 bikes last night, some cars, and I got quite a bit of confirmation from people watching this bike, and I worked strictly with this one here. So I one thing at a time tried to match it to the orange bike, which has the most technology, the most upgrades on it. And I can definitely tell the brake, because it has that stronger servo with a little heavier caliper, definitely more stopping power than what we ended up with here. But I went through a process of, I lightened the oil in the rear spring, tried to get it to eat up some of the track. Okay, it's not just about landing your bike. Nose up is important too, if you're long and short. But you don't set vehicles up to over jump, because if you do, they're not going to perform when the wheels are on the track. And this is what we saw. Is I switched this then down to the medium spring on the rear, and I put 40 weight in it, and that changed the bike right there. By softening the spring and then going, because I have moved up to 40 weight on this has a combination spring. I really like it the most, and I do think what I've discovered, this arm, we were comparing Jeff's to mine. This had the least amount of travel, so I worked on this to improve the travel, because that was a step in there too. Even though I had softened the rear end, it only had about that much travel, whereas this one, and I think it's the arm, oh my gosh, the travel is huge on this bike, and it may be this aluminum arm. And that really, what I'm discovering that does is the out of control wheeling that you get, and I try to show that in these videos that I've got. if your rear end is too tight, it's too hard, because you're setting it up for landings or whatever, it's wheel on the track, it eats up some of this, the bike pulling back, and it keeps the front end lower. Because I had actually taken the caliper off, was going to deal with that a little bit later. It just kept binding up. I had to take it apart to fix it. But so that has a lighter front end than this, and I wasn't sure if a little extra weight was helping, if the rear suspension was actually just eating that momentum of the bike kicking back. It can actually compress the suspension, keeps the front end lower, and if nothing else, it gives the driver a little more time to catch the throttle. And again, if you run this in the wheelie mode, the computer's slowing your bike down. I don't want that. I'm not going to turn 19-second laps if the computer's letting off the throttle for me. You got to be on it when you need it, and you need it in the air a lot to keep this attitude to the bike, because that's how they want to land right there. They're going to do the best for you. Landing flat can put stress out on the front. It actually pushes out on the front wheel. And you can break plastic up in here. These two both have the aluminum crash plate, and then this has the plastic bulkhead, and I think that accounts for some of the front shake, because this is way more under control on the front wheel. But part of that is the front shock. And in order for me to get under 20 seconds with this, and I'm telling you, it was just a struggle. Each thing that I did, I got to the point where I initially just turned some laps with it. I was hitting the 22s, 21s. I got this down to 20.1 was the best I could do with it. And that was after I had addressed the front forks. Again, this is used. One of the tubes it's not a complaint, but one of the tubes was bent a little. Well, it still is. It's still bent. It still kind of hangs just a little bit right there. And what I did to get it, so the main thing with your tubes is you loosen the clamp, and there was a lot of stress trying to put these tubes up in the clamp because of the bend, and I think it's the right tube that's bent, or the left tube, because it will twist. It's twisting on it, it's binding the forks up. And so what you do is you loosen this all up and rotate these so that you get the best feel. I'll push it up and it locks up, rotate until it comes down, and go to the other side. Well, I can't even turn this side. The left side, I couldn't even turn. I had to pull it out to be able to turn it at all. That's how it's got a pretty good bend, but it still ran okay. I mean, I got it so it moved. And then you'll notice too here, these will bind up. I spray a little dry lube in that to help this want to float and get it where it feels the best. And typically you want this on the outer side of the axle. If it shifts over too far, you're going to rub the tire right here. You're going to rub on that. But if you've got a bend and it's pulling on the fork, so let it set in a neutral point and then lock your lock on the bottom of that. Because if you just pull it out where it should be, or let it float in too far, you can have issues. But the rotation of this, rotating this, will actually cause that to slide back and forth. You don't want it to slide on the track. But a neutral point, meaning so that the forks work smoothly. And that took quite a bit. I'll put a new tube on that and straighten that out, and that will be even better. But I pulled the forks apart, lowered the oil to 30, because I've left the front forks at 30. When it's hot outside, 80 degrees, probably increase that a little bit. They may get a little too gushy in the warmer air. But I took the spacers out, so I tried to, just one thing at a time, match what I've done to this bike over here. And I eventually got it under 20 seconds. And I actually did a screenshot of that. For some reason the camera didn't record that run. And that was a no Marshall run. Meaning I ran a battery. and I did not have to go out and get my bike, which is cool. No marshals out here on a practice. I gotta go pick it up myself. So I'm gonna try to shoot it again. Oh, I had a note on the tires too. I was just right on the ragged edge of getting under 20 seconds. With this bike over here, I was doing a 19.65, and I think I had 15 laps with this. Again, not clean run. No, I did not need a marshal out there. But I went to get it under 20 seconds was when I added my homemade tire. I tried the whole shot a couple times, and the edge went away. So 2 batteries. There were 2 batteries in the edge of this. They just went away. It was useless. I actually went back to the knobby for a little bit, a newer knobby. The one that was on this was pretty worn. So this is the knobby that I put, and it's more cornering because the track is, it's like a road, an asphalt, but it's still, I mean, it's hard to explain. You're just running on these when you lean over, you're just on the corners of that. So if that's, all just completely gone. So here's my homemade tire. This has 8 batteries now. I'm going to run 9. I'm going to try it again this morning because that video it didn't record it. But I'm just now seeing, where, and this is my not perfect one. The tread's off center, had quite a bit of puckering. I didn't know how to glue it together yet. The other one that I made, and man, I'm going to look for some different treads too. So that held up really well, and putting this tire on then is what took this below 20 seconds. And I got a shot of them. It seemed like I had maybe I hit 19.6, but I hit a 19.11 with this bike here. Again, it's got a couple of different things on it. Some of that could be the braking. I can definitely tell. In fact, with the front brake, I've lowered my rear braking back to the 67%. And it seems to stop even quicker, and I think it's because we've eliminated rear wheel slide. You're not going in and getting the rear wheel sliding. Sliding wheels are useless. Essentially, you can actually just go right through, like you might as well not even put your brakes on, like ice maybe. But I think that held up really well. This homemade tire. I'm gonna try it again this morning and see if I can get a little bit of footage of this. So yeah, I put 30 weight in the heavier spring to soften it a little, and I hadn't noticed the travel difference in it yet because there's quite a big travel difference. So I just pulled some different clips from, I don't know, probably five times we went out. The first couple were really short runs because the bike was just really horrible. It was really hard to drive. We're watching the dark with the red, the one that just did the side hop. And it really kind of fishtailed. That comes up 3. I landed that way 3 times. So that little fish flop that happened there, and it's because of the harder it was worse. You're going to see it in a couple other spots. The bounces are much more aggressive with that heavier spring. And I'm talking about really when you're down on the ground. I mean, missing a jump, because if you land them, they all look pretty good if you land it right. So we went to the medium rear spring, and I had gotten the front brake cleaned up, so that was helping. Yeah, I definitely think the nose down. The forks are still the way they were. I hadn't softened them up yet. That was a complete head over flip, I think it looked like. On the front wheel. So the forks are okay. Okay as they come, anyway. So we put the knobby on it because the hole shot was burnt. A little bit slipperier feeling with the knobby on the harder surface anyway. Of course, these are MX bikes. It's, loose is better. Loose is more consistent, makes it easier. I had tried a punch of three because that was something else I was wondering if it was helping. Didn't like to keep the front wheel up as well. So I run the punch at four. I think on a much looser material we could get away with a punch of five. A little forgiveness, and that'll just help keep the nose up when you leave the ground. Gives you that little extra to kick the nose back up. There was a fishtail. Did about three full rotations on that one. I didn't cut that out because, yeah, I wanted to show this. That was actually pretty hard throttle in the corner was part of the fishtail. I think the softer rear end really helped. But I still don't have the full travel on the back of that, so it's only moving probably 60%. And then the bike with the aluminum arm on it, I'm just going to say gets another 20% of travel. And we did. I looked at Jeff's bike because you were just comparing them, which I got all the other ones there. His spacer was in, and I was just trying to compare it to his bike. He hadn't changed any of that, just the spring and the oil, which he has medium spring of 45 in that, in the yellow one. So here I softened the front end. Still got the knobby on it, and that's the only thing I did was I had softened the front end on it. And it does have the little bit of a bind. Yeah, so here's where I could tell with the wheeling, it just and leaving the power on, because that back spring ate up a lot of the torque. And I might have missed the other sideways landing going through the, just watching through and talking through it. Because there's two different. There's one I highlighted. I didn't highlight the other two. I put the notation on so that I wouldn't forget, certain things when I was watching back through this. But on that triple double coming back at us, where I pointed out a fish flop earlier, with the softer front end and rear end, the floppiness became less, and it was the same type of a landing, a little bit of on an angle sideways, and it'll get them flopping. And so my goal has been to just try to shut some of that down So I think I missed the second there. There was a little bit. I don't think that's the one that I saw it because it landed sideways when it did it. And you could see just it started to get into the fishy, but it went away. The suspension prevented that from getting all out of control because of the rigid suspension. Yeah, it gets the front wheel a little bit there, and again, the softer rear end takes some of that initial, whatever the inertia of getting that heavy grip suddenly, or the sudden just impact, and it keeps the front end from going as high, and you maintain your momentum. The wheelie down the, not out of control, and with the harder shocks, they just stand right up. There's nothing there to help absorb that, the weight of the machine coming back on that back wheel. It just stands right up. Not sure, that might have been a wheelie there. I did quite a few on the front. Just kept the horsepower on all it had. And this is still with a knobby, because I do a final run where I put the gridiron on it next day. Right here's that fish flop, or would have been tragic. That was like almost a total sideways landing. That's just, the suspension just ate it up. I've seen him do the thing that Jeff did with his bike earlier, where he just did 4 rotations, just right in a spot, just 4 rotations with it. And I had quite a few wheelies down the front, probably more with the gridiron on, because of the track surface. So here's one being actually quite grippy, with the right tire. And again, the whole shot, I would say the traction was the same, but they went away so fast. That's kind of my experience with whole shots. It just seems like whatever I put them on, they don't hold up. I've tried different compounds. So I went out and did another run this morning. I think my reflexes are down a little. That's part of this too, your reflex and your brain state. But the first thing, I overjumped the back double, and these stayed right up. So I had to bring it back in, and I just put a different battery in it, because I just pulled it back over and loosened everything up. So it's still loose. I can actually turn this a little bit. There, a little bit. And that's what so I actually ran it with it loose. I'll get a new tube and take care of that. So that's another thing on trim. Because Jeff had said he tried, well, this bike needs, because of the bend in the tube, I'm going to say, the tubes are tweaked. I think I can see it in this one right here. Right along here. You probably can't, but this bike is trimmed, and I know that because of what the DX5 Pros telling me that this is trimmed 16 clicks to the right. Well, value 16, so it's 8 clicks. And that's because trying to adjust this, and you do have to set them down. Put it along a straight edge. You got to turn it on and line your wheels up that way and actually force. Well, I couldn't force this anymore to the right. And then with the tube, then to relax it, that actually pulled it back. Pulled the wheel back to the right. Well, the wheel needs to go to the left slightly because it was leaning hard. And I'm telling you, just a couple points in the trim, when you're through your corner and you've released your steering wheel, you're on the throttle, the bike should stand up. But if it's at an inclination, the wheel's favoring the right like this, I'm exaggerating that. You come out of the corner and the bike maintains this attitude, so it's an oversteer. And it's just a few clicks on your steering trim. It's not a lot that causes that problem. And again, this bike had a slight lean this way. I'm exaggerating that so you can see it. Coming out of the corner. So I'm torquing on it, trying to get it, to the triple clamp, turn the wheel, force that, and then you can even retighten it. But this one is so bound up, you should be able to put the tubes right up in your triple clamp. You shouldn't have to fight it. And this really has a kink. And then that's a problem. So, I loosened it all up and it's all still loose. I just ran it that way. And I just didn't overshoot. Just really careful not to overshoot. But that ate up some stuff right there. Here's battery 9, 7 more minutes on this, and it's starting to get flesh wounds in it right here now, where it's kind of blistery where I had put it together. But I mean, the whole shot did fine, but it just burned out in the battery. One battery killed it. And if you're if you're out in moto situation, which we ran them with moto wheels on them too, in this real hard, in the hard pack, they do bite. This tire definitely made a huge difference out there. The wheelies were way more under control, and again, I think because of that, and I pulled several down the front stretch, and it rode it the whole way. It would set up and just hang right there, just stay in full throttle, and that makes a difference in the times that you're going to get. I didn't get quite as good. I right around 20 seconds. Everything was under 21. And that's pretty consistent. Ran the whole time. Other than, like I said, the very first thing I landed in the front fork bound up. But so you know what I say, if you're Losi Promoto on it, man, keep tapping that throttle.